Greetings and welcome back. This week I get started on what will be my third all-aluminum Mandalorian Merc costume build. This one is for my son. He's finally gotten to a stage in his life where he's ready to start pursuing some of his hobbies, and his first love is Star Wars. Mom and Dad are Mercs. He wants to be one too. Like the other two, the entire build will eventually be out of aluminum. He may have to start with a resin or fiberglass bucket. I don't know. Hopefully I'll be able to get him done get him an aluminum bucket done before Dragon Con. We'll see. This entire set right now that is missing the gauntlets and the knees, I'm going to do something a little different with the knees this time, was cut out of less than half of a sheet of 16 gauge aluminum sheet metal. I buy this stuff at a semi-local vendor way down, and actually for me it's cheaper than buying the equivalent amount of Sintra, and easier to work with because, well, I've got most of the stuff. However, this particular build, I am going to do two things differently. I have cut the entirety of the costume with hand tools, pin snips, purchasable in any local hardware store, and a fair amount of hand strength. I have cut everything you see on this table right here with these out of that metal. The other thing that I'm going to do differently on this build is I will not weld any of it. The previous two builds I welded and attached. That's how I attached the fasteners and stuff like that. I've picked up a couple of really good ideas on the Mandalorian costuming forums on Facebook, or Mandalorian costuming group on Facebook. There's some just crazy good information there, and I'm going to try a few of their ideas for attachment this time. The other thing that I'm going to do when I do this set is I am going to start out rolling the edges. Each one of these plates has black lines on the quarter of an inch on the edges. Those are where I will roll these edges over. It will give the plates, or I hope it will give the plates, the appearance of being thicker than they are, while still maintaining easy workability and very lightweight. So most of this stuff's going to be done with hand tools. There will be very little power tools. The exception to that will be the back plate. I have an idea that I want to try to see if I can't produce a better quality back plate than my last aluminum back plate. So this time I'm going to actually use a different machine, but that one will be down the road a little ways. So anyhow, got this stuff all cut out. Tomorrow I'm supposed to meet up with my son. He lives a little ways away, and do some fit testing before I actually start banging on this metal and shaping it into what will hopefully be an approvable costume. Enjoy the video. See you next week. This build was started using the medium-sized Django Fett templates that I downloaded. Of course, you print them all out, then start taping everything together like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Once you get everything taped together, you cut them out, or you can cut them out and then tape them together. I did a little bit of both. I haven't really found one to be better than the other. The couple of sheets of the aluminum that I used for this build have been sitting out in the garage for a time, so they were pretty filthy and dirty. I used some rubbing alcohol and acetone to clean them off. When I started tracing the templates, I actually left a fair amount of room around each one. That's for the extra additional quarter of an inch on the edges that I'm going to use to roll, and to just make it a little bit easier when I'm cutting. If I don't need to be quite as precise, if I go a little bit too much and cut into another piece, that would ruin one of the other pieces. I marked center lines and reference lines on any of the pieces that are going to need them. Any piece that has a insert or an inset like the shins or backs that need bent. I then used a flat piece of aluminum to add the quarter of an inch that I'm going to need to roll the edges. The templates as they are the size they need to be to fit. So I needed to add a quarter of an inch. When I rolled them over, that piece is going to be bent over at a 90-degree angle, or 90-ish degree angle. So it's not actually going to change the size of the template. And of course, on curved sections, I just added a quarter of an inch and then free-handed it in as best I could. And once I had everything templated out and the 1/4 of an inch added, I started cutting. A couple of notes on using metal shears. Don't cut all the way to the end of the blade. Stop your cut before you get to the end. If you cut all the way through the tip, it'll leave this funny little mark on the metal where the ends bend, and it's actually kind of hard to cover up. So I used about 3/4 of the blade or so. And then stop, move your blade forward, and then cut again. Sometimes in order to cut out tighter areas, you'll need to kind of dart it, to cut a couple pieces out here and there, and that way you'll be able to get the particular shear that you're going to use in sideways to cut out where you're limited in space, like for instance, where the chest diamond goes on the chest plates. And I've actually got 3 pairs of these metal shears, and I find them to be pretty helpful. 2 different curved cuts, and then a straight that I use for trimming. When it comes time to clean up the edges, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. File works well. Sandpaper. A Dremel with the sanding drum on it works pretty well. A lot of people have bench sanders. They work really, really well. I used a combination of a file and my bench sander to clean these edges up. I've used a Dremel for other kits, but this particular time I was actually able to get to my bench sander, so I used that. And here we go. All of that gorgeous sheet aluminum turned into this pile of soon-to-be Mandalorian armor. The entire kit, everything but the gauntlets and the knees at the moment, and potentially boot plates, depending on what kind of boots he chooses, weighs a little better than 5 pounds. If I'd have chose to just use flat plates, this build would have been a lot easier, and it probably would have weighed a little less. I don't know if there's an extra pound of material there, but there might be. Now, when I refer to rolling the edges, what I'm talking about is turning the edges like this over on their sides to make the material look thicker. In my opinion, Mandalorian armor looks better when it's got presence. This is actually the same size piece of metal that those are, and then what I did was I just added an extra little bit and then bent it over on the side like that. This piece is actually off of my kit. The edges are about 1/4 of an inch. This was one of my first attempts at learning this technique, so it's not as nice as it could be. I'm hoping to do a little better on my sons, so we'll see.